Hi, welcome back to the Can I Walk You Out podcast. I'm your host, Gabriella, and today I'm joined by one of my closest friends, Katie. Um, I'm so excited she's on. She's one of my only friends that actually really enjoys The Bachelor, or at least likes to hate watch it and talk about it with me. So I'm so excited to have her on.
Absolutely. I am a Bachelor convert since, 2017, 2018. I can't remember anymore. And I've gone back and watched old seasons because I'm pretty pathetic like that. So I'm ready to discuss. I'm thrilled to be on the podcast. I've loved all the previous episodes. So I'm just happy to be here.
Love it. And I honestly wish I had you on last week because I'll just start off. My overall thoughts for the episode was it wasn't great. Like the first hour, I was not really into it. What did you think?
I think it was kind of a return to like the cheesiness that I expect from The Bachelorette, but in a way where like the way the season had gone before this, I had been set up to expect Tayshia to be like this really transformative, incredible force. And she was just sort of a return to normalcy. I almost feel like it's going to be a parallel to the presidency where it's just like, am I expecting a lot? Weirdly, I am. But I know it's just going to kind of go back to the way things hopefully were before, and that's fine. I'm willing to say I'm happy about that, but it's odd.
What I will say is I liked Tayshia, but for me, the men overall, I'm like, some of these men are like the whole like what did they keep repeating? Grown ass men. I'm like, there are some boys here, and I'm like ready for them to grow up. So let's just get into it.
I think that was a theme throughout the episode overall. It's like repeating words, smoke show, grown ass men. I think we'll obviously get into it, but there were just some cliches overall.
And I really hope to never hear some of those phrases again. So the episode sort of starts off with the group date, and we have Ivan's as a big standout, Bennett, and then that's when we starting to get introduced to this Ed and Chasen drama. So Katie, what did you think of this date? We also saw the hosting of Ashley and Jared, and they were just one of many guest appearances this week. And I'm like, for a COVID bubble, it doesn't mean they're bringing a lot of people in and out of here. It's weird to me.
Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry. She just knocked down a bowl. You can't have bowls. I'm so sorry. I don't know if you can edit that out, but hopefully you can. If not, everyone, listeners, that was my puppy. She's kind of a disaster.
Kids, things happen.
Yes. Okay, so I thought the group date was actually kind of cute for the context. Like I was kind of tired of seeing like the La Quinta Inn constantly. I was a little bit over it. And so I was happy to see sort of that classroom setting, but I'll totally agree with you that it seemed really weird that there were so many guests, and especially last week raised those questions of like, how long have the new men been quarantining before they come in and meet Tayshia? How long had Tayshia been quarantining? They position it as this surprise that she's coming on the show, but they were ready with her pretty quickly. And then they have all these guests. But I did think the date was cute. I didn't really understand the like math problems and the spelling tests as far as like a test of compatibility with Tayshia. You know, I think the proof is in the pudding. It's like Bennett went to Harvard and he didn't really do well. And I'll admit smart dumb is kind of my type. So I thought that was kind of endearing that he like didn't get any questions right.
I thought that was hilarious considering I think people were probably expecting him to do really well. And I do think he's like still a smart guy. But you know, sometimes you need to be humbled. And the fact that he couldn't spell limousine, that's why dictionaries exist in spell check. So I don't hold that against him. And then what I thought was interesting overall, though, was that he didn't participate when they did like the pull, the weird thing, whatever his trick knee. But then he does end up winning because he puts on the robe, he gives her the beignets. But you know what? I actually thought this was more producer influence because how did they have that like diploma typed up already, right? It's like whoever shouldn't win is always the one who wins. Like whatever's going to cause the most drama.
Yeah, and I honestly thought he did deserve the win. I think of any of those three tests that we're going through, you know, the one that matters the most is like breakfast in bed. That's your reality. That's your day to day. You don't need him to be able to spell limousine. He just has to call up and order a limousine. Like, come on. And conversely, like, what all the physical ones, I find those to be the least appealing dates, because I'm like, I just really don't care how well you do at dodgeball. If you are gonna serve me a beignet in the morning and come in with a robe, that's very romantic.
It's so funny though, because after he won, he was trying to kiss her. I thought that was very awkward. Like, to have our first kiss in front of all these dudes, so it's like puts a lot of added pressure. But he was like determined. Like, he was not backing down. He wanted that kiss. And I would say it kind of paid off for him, except we saw later in the cocktail party where he again is trying to be aggressive, like trying to get in there. And before Tayshia can even open her mouth, he's like, "Can I steal you?" And she's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, okay. Like, can I say hi first?"
Totally. And I felt bad for him. I mean, I was a little nervous for a minute because I've enjoyed his presence on the show a lot. And I think he could end up being Tayshia's type. She went for a John Paul Jones before. So I kind of see some parallels there. But he was really setting himself up for failure, one, by bringing the diploma and setting it in front of the rose. That's a huge no-no to me. Like, don't constantly call back to your one success, A. And then B, you obviously, I think Tayshia lacks the context of knowing that Claire yelled at them for not immediately going to scoop her up. And so seems to still be in that Claire mindset of like, what should I do? What are the rules of engagement? And while those things might have worked for Claire a little bit, they're definitely not working for Tayshia.
And speaking of doing cheesy, corny things, Ed is the one who received the Man-Child Award. And Ed got a lot of screen time this episode, I think to his detriment. For me, before, I just didn't know who he was. He was just a background player. And now I think I actively dislike him. Not an Ed fan. How do you feel about Ed in general?
I started off the episode and the season in general thinking Ed was just like another boring guy who was out of here as soon as they noticed that he was still there, if that makes sense, because he's nothing. And no offense to him, and you know, I'm not trying to come off as that sort of level, but he's not exactly the most like conventionally attractive of all the men. He's in really good shape, but he just kind of doesn't stand out in terms of the pack of men. And so when he received the Man-Child with the Baby Award, or whatever we want to call that punishment, it was really unexpected. And I kind of thought, like, why is this guy who constantly flies under the radar even being noticed on the show? What are the producers playing at? And then it developed throughout the episode. And I would totally agree with you that he was horrible. And he made like every mistake he could make. He makes the cardinal sin of going to the Bachelorette and reporting on the behavior of one of the other men. I can't believe he survived the rose ceremony.
Ever done that. And I think what's really interesting to me is I feel like he also knows his place on the show. Like, in every single time he went back to Tayshia to be like a tattletale or rat, he was never like talking about himself, trying to further his connection. He sees there's no good vibes here, so I'm gonna bring like Chasen down with me. And I saw a lot of commentary where people are like, Ed has probably been losing girls out to guys like Chasen his whole life. Like, because Chasen is just like very pretty and very dumb, right? Like, probably doesn't have a lot going on underneath the surface. But Tayshia has said multiple times that she has like feelings for him, that she likes him, and nothing about like that about Ed has ever come out of her mouth. So I think
yes.
Why? Because like, let's talk about the things that specifically that Chasen or that Ed was targeting Chasen about. He said, "You're describing Tayshia the same way as you did Claire. He's known Tayshia for like a day. Like, God forbid he doesn't use 20 adjectives to describe a woman he's talked to for 15 minutes." What was his other big thing? That he's like fake.
Yeah, you're a different guy, not in front of the cameras. And he used that classic. I mean, that's a classic one. And then he also pulled out, you know, you're not here for the right reasons. You're here to get 6,000 more Instagram followers, which, Ed, that's not a really big number. I don't know where you came up with that, but whatever.
Level set, everyone here is here for Instagram followers. Like, there's only one winner. The winner usually gets the most Instagram followers of them all. And unless you have like no Instagram account, no Twitter, everyone here is to like build like a bigger platform for themselves. And if I was a lead and I knew I didn't like a certain guy, I'd be like, do whatever you want. Do whatever you want for camera time. I'm not going to pick you. I'm not going to bring you to fantasy suites. You're not meeting my family. I don't care. I literally don't care what you do. But obviously, as a lead, you have to like pretend. But I don't know. I just hate that argument. I'm tired of hearing that. I'm not here for the right reasons. Nobody is.
Right. And I think it's weird because you see that play out a lot in the past season. So I'll call back a little bit to Colton's season. You know, he was really worried when he was hearing about Hannah B. Oh, is she here just for Instagram followers? And Kaylin. Those two were really like at odds with each other. And it was weird because the whole time the only person he cared about, and he's admitted this, was Cassie. So why play up the drama? It has to be producer related in my mind. It's simply must. And so, but the difference here to me is that Tayshia doesn't seem to have a clear front runner. And so I don't think she has that level yet where she's going to say, like, I don't care what the other men do because all I care about is this guy. She seems to be genuinely interested in all of the men.
It's so funny that you said that because I literally wrote that down in my notes. I'm like, I am shipping her with so many people. This has never happened before. As of right now, I have no idea who she would pick. Like, it could go either way, and that's kind of the interesting thing about Tayshia. Is she's so versatile and she's very open to everybody. So sometimes it's hard to get a read on her like true personality and true thoughts because she's like a very nice person, and so I think she would like never want to hurt anyone's feelings. Like we even see later on when she sends Montel and Peter home, like the two new guys, and the other one other guy, Jay, another nobody. And she's like, yeah, I just wasn't vibing with them, so they're out. And I don't know, but I think for the most part, she does have a really strong vibe with almost, I would say, at least half the cast that's still here. So it's going to be really, really interesting. And we saw her have a lot of really nice moments. We saw Ben also got a lot of screen time this episode. So what did you think about Ben and their interactions?
Ben is Ben the soldier. That's basically just his personality, and that's who he is. I have to say, I feel like he is a lot of nothing. And then at the end of the episode, I'm sure we'll kind of cover off the other group date, but when he didn't go and get Tayshia, I think he clearly has a certain level of kind of cockiness where he thinks like, I'm an attractive guy, I'm someone women would want to be with and someone Tayshia would want to be with. And so I'm not worried about being proactive about my relationship with her, which I think is really unfounded. And I think it's interesting. I'm going to guess that a lot of the men are going to feel that way this season, that they have this really good connection with Tayshia that they assume the other men can't have. And that's going to create some tension and drama. But that's definitely the read that I get on Ben. And I don't personally find him particularly amazing. I think there's probably a lot of people out there who are saying like, oh my gosh, he's great, whatever. For me, he doesn't really do it.
I thought he came off at first very, very genuine. Like I thought they had a good time together. At first, like I was not sure about their passion when they kissed. But then he's like, "Let me go back in for one more." And I was like, "Oh, okay, like I see this." But then, like you were just saying, we saw into the next date. Once he like wasn't getting the rose, like wasn't getting the validation he wanted, he got like pettier and pettier. And he seems, I think, in his head for sure, he thinks he is the front runner, and I think he's probably gonna get a burst bubble soon. I mean, I love that Tayshia called him out during the second group date where she was like, "You should have came and found me. I wanted to talk to you. Don't just like hang back." Be like he had this whole plan. And if you're gonna have a plan, future contestants, don't tell the producers your plan because they're gonna try to screw with you. They want you to be miserable. They're not there to make you happy. They're there to make interesting TV. So hopefully he learned his lesson from that. I'm sure the producers were like, hold on, like you'll get to talk to her later. And then they're like, nope, night over. And then he misses his chance.
Yeah. No, I would totally agree. And it was a stupid plan. I don't care if I go first or second or third or fourth or fifth, like my conversation with her is gonna be great or whatever he said. Okay. That's a lot of confidence for someone who's like known her for a week. You know what I mean? So I think that he's an interesting guy. I think he's going to be an interesting player. And especially I'm hoping that this Ed and Chasen drama dries up pretty soon. And hopefully he's going to be someone who brings a little bit more into the mix soon.
So after we saw the end of that first cocktail date, they go right before the rose ceremony. And I thought she had a lot of really special moments with the guys. Like we saw Joe get a few shout outs today. He like showed him like a picture of his family, and then he was
and they ate Korean food. Oh, I think he's cute.
I thought that was so cute. And then who else? She had a little brief chat with Spencer, who got her the popsicles. Bennett had the Eiffel Tower, and then Demar wrote her the nice poem. And I want more screen time for Demar. He's so handsome and he seems like so genuine. I like him a lot. And Tayshia looked really, really beautiful. I love that black dress with like the slit. I thought she looked incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And then Zach. She had a really good conversation with Zach, who that's probably, I think that still might be my favorite guy. I love watching them talk. I thought his body language was very awkward during that little time when his like leg was up on the desk and he was like twisted halfway. I don't know what he was thinking with that.
And she even asked him about it, and his explanation was so weird. I see the attraction on the Zach level, especially because he is older, and I think this is even the second time that she's tried to bring that age up with him. Like, why are you older and single? What's going on with you? And so that makes sense to me. But I think she has to kind of ask herself throughout the season, like, what are you looking for? Because there are some men like Zach, and I would say even Joe, who seem like a little more tame and a little bit more like the guy who's gonna, stay home with you, cook you a nice dinner. You're gonna get started on your family, and you're just gonna be kind of quiet lifestyle. But there's that other side of her. She's an influencer, despite what she is unwilling to market herself as. And she's that type of person who wants to be taken to Paris, like Bennett mentions, and, be pampered. And I think there are some of the other men who are a little bit more willing to be a little more adventurous with her and really get out there. And so she has to ask herself, there's kind of that dichotomy, which one is the direction that I want to go with at the end of this season. So I do believe her when she says I'm falling in love with multiple men in the previews and stuff, because they're all really pretty different.
And I think all her front runners are also pretty different. Like, I don't think Brendan is anything like Zach or anything like Ivan or anything like Bennett or anything like Spencer or a new front runner I've added, Noah. But we'll get into that a little later. So again, they had the rose ceremony. She sends Montel, Peter home, who were both newbies. I don't think she just wasn't attracted to them, so they were gone. And then also Jay. And then we get into the wrestling date. And again, they broke the COVID bubble. It's always nice to see Wells. I think he's like funny, adorable. You talk about a Bachelor Nation glow up. Like, he probably, other than maybe like Rachel Lindsay, is probably one of the most like bigger household names of the Bachelor Nation. But I don't really think he brought a lot to the episode. Like, I can't even remember anything super funny that he said during that like hosting time with Chris Harrison. It was not a standout for me.
I know. I was a little disappointed. I think, some of his commentary was pretty dry. I like Wells, but I also, I don't sometimes get his celebrity in relation to Bachelor in Paradise. Like, even as a bartender, he's a little bit nothing. Like, he had that funny relationship kind of with that girl who was from Japan who didn't really speak any English. Yeah. And he was just kind of like her only friend. And, so he has funny things that he does, but I just didn't really feel like he was shining a lot in this episode. And then, of course, you had the two judges come in from the wrestling side of things. This is, again, a group date. I'd really love to understand what the appeal is. I get wanting men to duke it out for viewership, especially if somebody gets hurt, which a lot of them did. But to me, like, if I was the Bachelorette, I'd be like, I just really don't care if they can wrestle. And she spends time with all of them at the end of the episode anyway, so I don't really get the point.
I mean, it's filler, right? And I don't get the appeal of watching the men like brutalize each other and slam each other around. I think the only good thing that comes out of it is if you get a little cut, then Tayshia's gonna maybe like rub on you for like 5 minutes. But other than that, it's just like another parade of like toxic masculinity. And that's why I loved the end of the show when we were done with group dates and we don't even have to like deal with, because it's just boring to me, and would always prefer to fast forward it. But sometimes you get a cool moment like where Ed totally chickens out and decides he doesn't want to wrestle Chasen because of his shoulder. And then did you see that video where, not the video, but like early in the episode when Ed was like working out and he was like making that really stupid face with his shoulders? He just looked crazy. So the fact that he gets all oiled up, is sitting there, and then at the very last possible second goes over to Chris Harrison's like, hey, Chris, I can't do it. It was embarrassing.
Yeah, that was an embarrassing moment for him, especially because of all the crap. I don't know if I can swear on this podcast. He's tried to stir up with Chasen, where I think he had been waiting that whole time to hear like, what's the matchup going to be? And first of all, Ed, you're an idiot if you ever thought it wasn't going to be Chasen. One. And, you know, then to go, it's this awkward like, hey, can you give me 1 second to talk to Chris Harrison? I was embarrassed for him, and I think if this is a bid on his part to be sort of like that sycophantic villain who ends up on Bachelor in Paradise, I don't think he has the popularity. I don't think he has that level of following to get there. Meanwhile, Chasen is going to be that kind of guy who, once he is off of the show, you know, he's going to have a lot of followers. He's like kind of got that sort of almost dumb blonde thing going on.
I do want to make fun of Chasen a little bit because there was a TikTok circulating around, and I watched it like 3 times, and I was like, did he look at this before he posted it on the internet for all to see? Like, what was he like? Did he think he looked good? Did he think this made him come across very well? It was very embarrassing. I'm gonna post it on our Instagram, listeners, so you can all also see the horrendous dance moves of Chasen. It definitely made me want to stop defending him a little bit.
Chasen posting like a lame TikTok like that is the epitome of like, I think Ed has a point there. Like, he is maybe there for the wrong reasons. It's for, you want women and girls everywhere to be saying like, oh, that guy's hot and whatever. He's got a big following and he can get a Smile Direct sponsorship or whatever he's going to get. But I think the awkward thing is that like Chasen, I almost feel like doesn't have it through his skull, like what exactly it is he's doing here, you know? And especially I think that was highlighted in the episode where Ed says to him, you know, oh, you have these 5 adjectives that you use to describe Claire that I'm hearing you also use to describe Tayshia. First of all, calling a woman beautiful is such a basic adjective that it's not like he pulled out like effervescent and was describing them both as effervescent. So I thought that was a little bit of a harsh criticism. I think all of them are willing to say Claire was beautiful and Tayshia was beautiful. Claire was bubbly and Tayshia was bubbly. Energetic.
This point. What was, besides maybe Ivan, who is like clearly was like, I don't like Claire and I like Tayshia so much better. So maybe in that instance, but there's only so many adjectives you can use to describe a person anyway. But I do want to talk about something that all the men apparently found controversial was Chasen's new adjective he came up for Tayshia, smoke show. Now, I don't mind the term smoke show. What I found annoying about that segment was Chasen like getting up and announcing to everyone like, hey, like I've been racking my brain for hours all night and I've come up with this amazing new term so none of you can make fun of me. And they just proceeded to drag him for how dumb he was. And it was definitely hard to defend him after that. But again, the term smoke show is not rude. I think it's actually a compliment. I don't understand why people would think of that as negative.
I don't think it's negative per se, but I do see where the men were coming from. One, because he said it so much. I think to announce that you came up with the word smoke show and then say, Tayshia's a smoke show, she's a smoke show, oh my gosh, she's a smoke show, and I'm doing this for my smoke show is so, it's over the top. And I think like he didn't really understand the point of the criticism that Ed was trying to level at him. And I think he also failed to recognize that that was coming from Ed and nobody else. So he didn't need to make an announcement to the whole group. But then on the second level of why I don't understand it, or why I do understand why people are a little bit upset about it, is because it is a little juvenile. I think it's a compliment to say you're hot. And saying you're a smoke show is a way to say you're a 10. You're a really beautiful, hot woman, whatever. Fair. But I think it is a little bit of a younger compliment. And I think all of the men are trying to position themselves as they said a million times, grown-ass men. And they're not willing to go off and say, you're a smoke show, you got a banging bod, et cetera, et cetera. They rather go in the direction of something a little bit more eloquent. Fine. I think I can see where people drew the line with Chasen on how often he said it and the subtext of the word.
But considering that despite Chasen's limited vocabulary, I still think Tayshia likes him, and I do think he's gonna last way longer than Ed, probably longer than most of these guys. Because at this point, if Tayshia hasn't kissed you, and if I'm not seeing you, I think if you didn't get a like a, if we didn't see the solid one-on-one time with Tayshia in this episode, I don't think, I think the rest of the guys that we didn't see are probably not long for this world. And I know that they announced that Matt James's season is premiering January 4th, and that Tayshia's season will be done in 2020. So but I was looking around, I'm like, there are a lot of guys left. And yes, I do think I know more of them now. There are still a bunch where I'm like, who is that? Why do I care about him? So I think they need to speed it up a little more, do a little like a more double eliminations. Like, do you think they're even going to do a 2-on-1 this season? Maybe with Chase, they'll do a 2-on-1.
I hope not, because both of them deserve to go home, and I think that would be a little bit of a frustrating 2-on-1 to watch as a viewer. I'm curious what will happen with Tayshia. I wonder if she's going to start bending or breaking the rules a little bit more. One of the starkest differences between her and Claire is that she seems to really be a stickler for the process. And so, you know, on the first night, she broke the rules by letting them stay a little bit longer, but I thought that was kind of an integrity move. I think the producers helped her come up with that to kind of get that goodwill from the men, especially because she's coming in later in the season. They presumably came for Claire, and now they're being thrown a new Bachelorette. So, but from there, she's been really kind of on schedule, doing it by the book, and she doesn't, you know, ask to send one extra person home. She hasn't asked to walk anybody out, you know, before their time. And she's really thoughtful. She tries to give compliments to all the men in the rose ceremonies before she gives a rose away, which is very sweet, but it's definitely slowing up the process a little bit. And she also has proven herself to be someone who's like really willing to go by the book in terms of like, the producers say this party is over, so Ben, no, I'm not talking to you. And, you know, you came to interrupt. I'm, you know, here's the policy basically of what I'm going to follow. It's very interesting.
But I do agree with you, but she did break the rules a little bit with Noah. So at the wrestling date, we did see Chris Harrison be like, does anybody want to like volunteer to like wrestle for Tayshia's heart? And Noah hopped the fence, and yes, he lost to Chasen, but I mean, I thought it was a good performance. He didn't rip his jeans. I thought he was putting his whole heart out there. And Tayshia does reward him with getting to like coming on to the night part of that date. And all the men were pissed. And to me, they should have been A, pissed at Ed, and then B, pissed at themselves, because any one of them could have like volunteered to wrestle again. Nobody stood up. And so how can they be mad at Noah for like being bold and taking that chance?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I was surprised we didn't get a little bit more of like the men back at the house being like, why didn't I think of that? Or, you know, how unfair that he gets to go out on another date. But you're right. That's a good point that she did let him kind of tag along after that. But again, I feel like that's another sort of integrity move. And I almost feel like you can hear the producers whispering in her ear, like, you know what would really piss them off? Bring this guy along now and talk to him twice as Ben 0 times.
Then give him the rose and really pissed. So it's like the men all feel like a rose was like stolen from them. But what did you think of their connection though? And it was mostly making out and then the shaving of the mustache. But I don't know. I saw sparks. I saw some sparks flying.
Noah strikes me as another Chasen type of dumb blonde, and it's hard for me to tell if that's Tayshia's type or not. You know, she kind of seems to go for that like lower level of intellect. And I'm not trying to be rude. I'm really not. But you know, like their conversations are not exactly like, what's your favorite piece of art at the Louvre? Like they're really going in a different, you know, make out. It's a physical attraction. I get that. I liked that she made him shave the mustache because it was horrible to look at on the screen, and for all the other men, apparently it was also an eyesore.
I'm like, oh, there's a cute guy under there, and he is young, and he's 3 years younger than her, which the men all said like, oh, he's not a threat because he's 25, and why would she be interested in him? Blah 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 blah. And so I'm sure they're very very bitter that he ended up getting that rose. And I still don't really think that they think he's a threat yet. But it'll be really, because in the previews, I remember seeing Noah. I didn't know who that was at first, but now that he shaved his mustache, I know that that's Noah. I think they're going to try Noah as the season's villain instead of Spencer. Who,
Or instead of Spencer, instead of Chasen, instead of Ed, I mean, it just feels like it switches all the time. And there was that moment in the beginning of the episode where it almost felt like they were going to go with Bennett because he brought that little thing and he tried to get into a little fight with everyone. So I don't know if they can even really settle on who the villain is, but I hope that they do it soon, because I think a season is always more interesting with a really defined villain that the men are united against, because it just brings up a lot more of that, like, 10 men come to you telling you that this guy sucks, instead of just Ed, who she does not take seriously.
It's always especially good too when the lead also likes the villain the most. Like, and we saw in Hannah Brown's season with Luke P. Luke P was her front runner. Like, she did not want him to leave for weeks and weeks and weeks. She didn't care what the guy said. Luke P had to push her to the edge before Hannah Brown was like, okay, you're not my husband, goodbye. It really felt like he was probably going to win if he hadn't made those dumb comments after her fantasy suite with Peter. And right now, I think Noah's going to win. And I would say another really strong front runner for Tayshia is Brendan. And speaking of you saying like how there's a lot of making out, it's very, very physical. Brendan actually did ask like a very good question. He asked her like, how did it feel when she started dating again after the divorce? And I thought, yes, like there's like real depth to their relationship. And Tayshia was like, shut up, like, let's make out. Like, she literally like covered his mouth and was like, you're rambling. Which, yeah, like, he was rambling a little bit, but it was all good stuff. Like, it was very cute. But then they had a really good make out, and he didn't get the rose, but I think he definitely will be getting a rose next week.
Yeah, I definitely see a strong connection there, but I think what I struggle with is, like, I don't even really know who's going to go home next week. I mean, I think it should be Ed. I hope maybe Chasen will just go, because I'm a little bored of him. And, but then from there's a lot of men who are like really showing themselves well. You can't discount anyone. It's like Easy and her have that great energy. They seem like they'd be fun kind of adventure partners. Bennett obviously has an appeal to her. Damar wrote her that wonderful poem. Riley has that level of attraction where like he's really aggressively into her. There's all of these men along the way who now are really showing themselves to have an interest in Tayshia, and she seems to have an interest back. So I think it'll be a fun season. It's not going to be really easy to tell who's going home and who's getting to stay.
So after we've discussed everybody, who would you say are your top 4 right now? And have they changed from who you thought last week? If you had to pick 4.
Yeah. So for Tayshia specifically, I would say, like, I'm surprised that Brendan.
Brendan? There is a Brandon here though, but I don't know who it is.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go Brendan then, Turtleneck Man / Steve Jobs. So, he surprised me last week by having a connection with her. And I, at the time, thought it was kind of forced. And I was like, this is nothing. But this week really reinforced to me that they do have something going on. So I think he's moved up into kind of my top 4. I would not be surprised to see Easy stay, just because, they have that good kind of casual energy. I don't think he's going to win, but I think he's a good top 4 contender. And then Zach, I think obviously he's going to make it all the way, because he's sort of this calm, easygoing presence, and he brings that level of maturity that she's looking for. And then, the 4th one is kind of a toss-up, but I almost think it will end up going to Spencer, who I think will rise to the ranks of the villain that we deserve.
He did get that first impression rose, and as you know, first impression rose people, they're either always the villain or they win on The Bachelorette. So
that's true. And I think I was listening to last week's episode of this podcast, and I was contemplating that for a little while. I wonder if they're starting from a producer level to say, like, everyone knows the first impression rose makes it really far. I wonder if they're prepared to kind of go to The Bachelorette, and maybe they did with Tayshia, and say, like, just pick somebody, but don't pick your front runner. Don't pick the real first impression, because we want to throw people off. Because now he's kind of faded into the background this week.
He didn't get a lot of screen. I think we saw them make out very briefly, but yeah, I was trying to figure out my top 4, and he did slide a little bit. I think he was like in my top 3 last week, but I'm replacing him with Noah. I'm going to say Noah is going to be top 4. So I'm going to say Noah, Brendan, Zach. my fourth is tricky. I can't really decide a four. Um I am between, I think maybe Ben, or I think maybe Bennett. So I'm gonna
Mm.
I'll throw Bennett a bone and say he might be top four. I'm not sure, but he'll just be my wild card pick. So
I'm not putting Bennett in mine because I love him and I like don't want to jinx him. I'm like, please go far.
I think they really, really like him. I think he's definitely going to be on Paradise. I think he's going to be making multiple appearances in Bachelor Nation in the future. Um, and I don't know. I still think he might be here for vacation. I'm not really sure if he's super into Tayshia, but we haven't got to see them interact one on one very much. Like even at the beginning of the group date when he was wearing the robe and he asked me to pull her first, but Tayshia ended up going with Chasen. So we never even got to see them talk. So I don't know
True.
like, but I think I do, like you said, I saw a little bit of John Paul Jones. He's a little weird, and I think Tayshia likes weird. So I think he might go far. But that is our episode. It was so great having you here, Katie. You're definitely coming back. You were an amazing guest. So everyone, rate us 5 stars, subscribe, tell a friend about us. And Katie, it's time to walk you out. Okay,
Thank you.
okay, bye guys.